I still remember that Sunday morning like it was yesterday. The church smelled of old wood and candle wax. The same pews, the same hymn books with wrinkled pages. I sat in the same seat I'd sat in for 20 years. Third row from the back, by the aisle. No one ever sat beside me. Sometimes I'd imagine they did. My husband, my little girl, but when I turned, the space was always empty. People came and went. Families grew. Children I once saw baptized, grew up, got married, moved away. And me, I just stayed. I came every Sunday, rain or shine. Not because anyone expected me to. No one would notice if I didn't come. But because this was the only place that still felt safe. When you sit in silence long enough, even the walls start to remember you. The old pastor had retired years ago. The new one was kind, but busy. He always greeted me with a polite smile, but I could see he didn't know my name. That used to hurt. Now, it just felt normal. 20 years ago, I lost my family. And the truth is, I never really found my way back. Some Sundays, I'd sit there after everyone left, just me and God. I'd whisper, "Lord, I'm still here." No answer ever came. Just the creak of old wood and the hum of the lights. But that Sunday, something was different. The air felt heavy, warm, almost alive. And just as I was about to leave, someone said my name. I wasn't always alone. There was a time when this church was full of laughter for me. Back then, I used to sit in the front row right beside my husband, Samuel. He had the kind of voice that filled the whole room when he sang. Deep, strong, joyful. When he sang Amazing Grace, even the windows seemed to shimmer. We got married right here, in this same church. He was wearing a gray suit 2 sizes too big, and I wore a white dress I sewed myself with trembling hands. We didn't have much, but we had faith. And each other. For years, Sundays were our best days. We'd bring our little girl, Clarissa, our miracle baby. She was born after doctors said I never could have children. She'd sit between us, swinging her little legs, humming the hymns she barely knew. Those were good years, simple, full of love, full of purpose. We worked hard, prayed harder, and trusted that life would stay kind. But life has a way of testing your faith. When Clarissa turned 14, she started coughing a lot. Doctors said it was allergies at first, then maybe asthma. We didn't worry too much, until that one night, she couldn't breathe. I still remember the sound. Her gasps echoed through the house like something breaking inside me. We rushed her to the hospital. Machines, lights, doctors speaking in soft tones. And then that word, the one that changes everything, cancer. They said it was advanced. They said we caught it too late. Samuel held my hand so tight I thought he'd break it. We prayed every night, every morning, every hour. We prayed until our knees ached. And for a while, we believed she might get better. There were good days, laughter, little miracles. But then came that morning. The morning she didn't wake up. After the funeral, Samuel stopped singing. He stopped going to church. He said, if God was there, he would have saved her. I tried to stay strong. I told him, God didn't take her to punish us. He took her home. But he just looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize anymore. One night, he packed a small bag, kissed my forehead, and said, I can't sit in that church anymore, Mary. Not after what we lost. Then he walked out. He never came back. So I stayed. I kept coming every Sunday. At first, I thought he'd return. Then I hoped maybe God would send me a sign, something, anything to let me know he still saw me. But days turned into years. The pews changed. The people changed. The pastors changed. And I stayed in that same seat, third row from the back, whispering prayers that never seemed to reach heaven. Sometimes the choir would sing one of Samuel's old favorites, and I'd close my eyes, pretend I could still hear his voice beside me, pretend my daughter was still swinging her legs in that pew. That's why I came back every Sunday. Because, if I stopped, It would be like losing them all over again, and I couldn't bear that. But after 20 years of silence, you start to wonder if heaven forgot your name, until that one Sunday, when I heard mine spoken clear, gentle, and warm. Mary. I turned around, and that's when everything changed. The rain had started again, soft at first, then harder, 1,000 small fingers drumming against the roof of the church. Everyone had already left. The ushers had stacked the hymn books. The lights near the altar were dimmed. It was just me and the sound of rain. I sat there the way I always did, hands folded, head bowed. I whispered my same old prayer, not for blessings, not for miracles, just for peace. Lord, I said quietly, I'm still here. And then, I sighed, because I didn't expect an answer. I never did. But then, I heard it. My name. Mary. It wasn't loud. It wasn't echoing from the microphone or the back hallway. It was soft, like someone standing right behind me. My heart jumped. I turned around fast, but the church was empty. Every pew behind me was bare. Only the flickering light from the candles near the altar glowed against the walls. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was tired. But then I heard it again. This time, closer. Mary. It was a man's voice, calm, kind, familiar somehow. I stood up slowly, my knees shaking. Who's there? I whispered. No answer. Just the sound of the storm outside. Then I noticed something, a figure sitting in the front pew, near the altar. I hadn't seen him before. A man, dressed in simple clothes, head bowed, hands clasped like he'd been there the whole time. For a moment, I just stared. He looked peaceful. There was something about the way the light touched him, warm, golden, almost like sunlight breaking through stained glass. I walked slowly toward him. Excuse me, I said softly. I didn't realize anyone was still here. He lifted his head and smiled. And my heart nearly stopped, because his face, it looked so familiar. Not exactly like Samuel, no. Younger, different. But his eyes, they had the same warmth, the same calm I hadn't seen in 20 years. You've been waiting a long time, he said gently. My throat tightened. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, he said, smiling faintly. Every Sunday, every prayer, every tear. You think heaven didn't hear you, but it did. I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. Who are you? I whispered. He didn't answer. He just looked up toward the cross at the front of the church and said, You never stopped believing, even when you felt alone. That's why I came. The lights flickered once, soft and golden, and for a moment, the air felt warm. Not the kind of warmth from fire or the sun. This was different. It felt alive. Tears filled my eyes. I took a step closer. Samuel, I whispered, almost afraid to say it. He smiled again, sad, kind, knowing. Not exactly, he said softly. But he's with us. Always has been. Before I could speak again, thunder rumbled, shaking the windows. The candles flickered wildly, and when I looked back toward the front pew, he was gone. Just gone. No door creaked open. No footsteps echoed. Just the faint scent of something sweet like roses after rain, and a strange peace that settled over the whole room. I stood there for a long time, my hands trembling, my heart racing. Then, for the first time in 20 years, I felt something break, not from sadness, but from relief. And I whispered through tears, Thank you, Lord. I thought you forgot about me. That night, I didn't go home right away. I sat there in the dark, watching the candles burn low. I didn't understand what happened. Maybe I never would, but I knew one thing for sure. Heaven still knew my name. When I woke up the next morning, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it. That voice, that man, that warmth in the air, it couldn't have been real. But when I walked back into the church, I could still smell the roses. The same sweet scent, lingering like a secret only I was meant to know. The custodian was sweeping near the front pews. "Morning, Ms. Mary," he said. "You left your Bible here last night." He held it out to me with a kind smile. I opened it and froze. There, tucked between the pages, was a single white rose petal, fresh, soft, fragrant, and I knew it wasn't a dream. That Sunday changed something deep inside me. The emptiness I'd carried for 20 years began to feel lighter. The silence didn't scare me anymore, because now I knew the silence wasn't empty. It was full of presence, full of love I couldn't always see. I started talking again, not just whispering prayers into the void, but really talking to God. Sometimes out loud, right there in my pew. Sometimes just in my heart while washing dishes or walking home. "Lord," I'd say, "I don't know why you waited so long, but thank you for not giving up on me." That week, I baked cookies and brought them to the church office. The young pastor looked surprised. "Mary, I didn't know you baked." I smiled. "Oh, honey, I used to bake for every fundraiser this church ever had." He laughed. We could use some of that spirit again. So I came back that Thursday to help in the kitchen. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was teaching the youth choir how to make homemade cornbread before Sunday service. The church that once felt like a tomb started to feel alive again. Not because it changed, but because I did. One afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, humming one of Samuel's old songs, when my neighbor, Miss Janet, stopped by. She was a widow too, quiet and lonely, just like I'd been. She sat with me a while, and somehow, without planning it, I told her everything. About Samuel, about Clarissa, about the years of silence, and the night someone called my name. When I finished, tears rolled down her cheeks. She said softly, "Mary, I haven't been to church in 10 years. I think I'll go this Sunday." I smiled through my own tears. "I'll save you a seat, 3rd row from the back." And she came. The next Sunday, for the first time in 20 years, I didn't sit alone. That's when I realized something. The miracle wasn't just that someone spoke my name that night. The real miracle was that God was giving me a reason to speak again, to reach out, to bring others back to the light I thought I'd lost. Soon, more people started sitting near me, folks who had drifted away from faith, just like I had. We didn't talk about theology or miracles. We just shared stories, pain, hope, small moments that reminded us we weren't forgotten. The pastor started calling us the 3rd row family. He said every church needs one, a place where broken people can sit, heal, and find home again. One day, he asked me to give a short talk before service. "Just share your testimony, Miss Mary," he said. My heart nearly stopped. I hadn't spoken in front of a crowd since my daughter's funeral. But that Sunday, I stood up anyway. My hands were shaking, my voice trembling, but I spoke. I told them about the years of silence, about the night I thought God had forgotten me, and the night I found out He never had. When I finished, the church was quiet, and then, one by one, people stood. Some were crying, some were smiling, and then they started to clap. Not for me, but for what God had done. The pastor wiped his eyes. He said, "Sometimes God speaks loud, but most times, He whispers, and only the faithful are still enough to hear Him." That day, something beautiful happened. People came up to me after service, men, women, even teenagers, telling me they'd been praying for a sign, that my story was the sign they needed. And I thought, so that's why you waited, Lord. Because the miracle wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who had ever sat alone, waiting to hear their name. Faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers in an empty church, calls your name when you're about to give up, and reminds you that heaven still knows exactly who you are. Years passed after that night. The seasons came and went, like pages in an old hymn book. Spring flowers, summer rain, golden autumn leaves, and still, every Sunday, I sat in that 3rd row. Only now, it wasn't empty anymore. My third row family, as the pastor called us, grew bigger every month. Widows, veterans, young mothers, teenagers who'd lost their way, people who'd been forgotten by the world, all sitting side by side. All of us searching for the same thing, a voice that still called our names. I wasn't the same woman who once sat there in silence. The pain was still there. You never stop missing the ones you love. But it didn't define me anymore. It became part of my strength. Every Sunday, I'd bring something small to share: a pie, a prayer, sometimes just a smile. And every Sunday, someone new would sit beside me. It was like God kept sending them one by one. The lonely, the weary, the hopeless. And somehow, I knew exactly what to say, because I'd been all three. One morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through my window. The clock said 6:45. The house was quiet. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the world wake up. The air smelled like rain, fresh and new. That's when I realized something: I hadn't cried in months. Not out of sorrow, not out of loneliness. Only joy, only gratitude. At 82 years old, I finally felt alive again. I started keeping a little journal, not a sad one, full of what-ifs, but a thankful one. Each day, I wrote one line. Today, I felt God in. Sometimes it was small, in a sunrise, in laughter, in the voice of a child. Sometimes it was big, in forgiveness, in courage, in peace. And every night, before I went to sleep, I'd whisper, "Thank you for still calling my name." One Sunday, the pastor announced they were repainting the sanctuary. He said they'd be moving the pews around for the renovation. I smiled and told him, "Don't you dare touch my third row." He laughed. "We'll keep it just as it is, Miss Mary. That row belongs to you." But I shook my head gently. It belongs to everyone who ever needed a place to come home. That summer, I fell ill for the first time in years. Just a small cough at first, then fatigue, then long days in bed. The doctor said it was my heart, weakened over time. Nothing sudden, just life doing what life does. They wanted me to rest, but I asked one thing: "Can I still go to church?" He smiled. "If you have the strength, Mrs. Mary, go." So I did. I sat in my usual place, thinner and slower now, but surrounded by faces I loved. Janet on my left, Mr. Henry on my right. The young choir girls waving at me from the front. The pastor gave me a nod before service, the kind that said, "I see you, I know you, I'm grateful for you." The sermon that day was about endurance. About how faith doesn't mean never falling. It means standing up every time you do. I smiled, because I'd lived that sermon. When it ended, people lined up to hug me. Some said, "You changed my life." Some said, "You brought me back to God." But I just smiled and said the same thing every time. "I didn't do that. He did. I just saved you a seat." That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders. The sky was clear, full of stars. I looked up and whispered, "Lord, I'm ready whenever you call my name again." The wind moved softly, warm and gentle, like a hand on my cheek. And in that stillness, I swear I heard it. Not with my ears, but with my heart. "Mary," just one word. But it carried everything: comfort, love, peace. The same voice from that night, years ago. Only this time, I wasn't afraid. I smiled. "I hear you, Lord." The next morning, when the pastor opened the church doors, he found my Bible in the third row pew, a white rose pressed between its pages. My seat was empty, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt holy. And on the back of the pew, written in my neat handwriting, was a little note taped to the wood. It said, "If you're sitting here, it's because you were meant to. Don't give up. Heaven still knows your name." They buried me under the old oak tree behind the church. Every Sunday, people still leave white roses there. The choir still sings. And if you listen closely, when the organ goes quiet, you might just hear it faint, gentle, sure, Mary. And somewhere, I'm smiling. Because faith didn't just change my life. It changed my forever.